Hi,
Good morning.
good morning. How soon are you coming? Pretty soon, right?
Oh, I li November 1st. Oh no, you froze. Froze. I don't know if it's you or me.
Are you all right?
Oh yeah, you were frozen, but
Oh,
I don't know
you're,
if it was you or me.
hmm. For some reason, it's saying my internet is unstable, but I'm in my office and my normal Wi-Fi. But the weather is weird today. We don't usually ever get rain before Sukkot, but it was like drizzling on and off. But it looks good out. I'm not sure. Hopefully, it'll be good.
Yeah. So I'm coming November 1st.
Very excited to see you.
I know. So excited.
How's your son
So
doing?
he's good. He's in Gaza. Um, hopefully, right before he got, they went in this time, he got permission to come back for Rosh Hashanah and a niece's wedding, but it's kind of being held up. So I don't know.
Well, keep it in
He
mind.
called last night from his commander's phone for like 2 seconds just to say it's tough. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, you know. So where's your son at?
So he just finally finished the course with all the tests. And so now he's deployed at a base. He left today. So we'll see when day to time what happens now.
Is he north or south?
So today he's center-ish um,
Hmm.
at one of the big stations for the helicopters, one of the
Right,
main like stations, but he doesn't know once he gets there and they're all settled into their space
right.
where they'll be next. So one day at a time, I'm on a need to know basis. And
Yes, it's amazing. They tell us more than I thought they would,
yeah,
or he does at least. Like,
so
but
thank God, like there's still like a uptick. God is being very nice and like doing it in slow, gradual manner for us. Like, okay,
yeah, I think I kind of
it's
felt like
fine.
ours did that. Like I was expecting like boom, and then all of a sudden it was kind
Right.
of slow. And we have a really good parent group. Uh, and I didn't know a lot of our friends said that like before the war, they didn't like have these things. And now, like, I don't know, because we've only known that, but we have this great parent group. They bring things in every week to these kids. It's
Um,
unbelievable. It's really nice. So, and then, I'm sure like with your son, with the whole that it's a piece of machine. I mean, I swear a tank breaks down on such a regular basis. They come out, and even if it's just for a little bit, they like bring the box of the phones and they all call, and then, you know,
exactly. So
so it's,
I'm sure
yeah,
it's going to be fine. And just, one day at a time. And now I think it's all the pressure to now do it. Like you studied and, everything's going on. Now people's lives are in your hands. Like, I think there's also like some nerves, like,
that lays
it's
down really quick. Murray had that, but it lays down really quick. And God, the bond of these kids is unbelievable. Murray had a week off and he was so sad being back in his apartment. That lone soldier thing definitely was hard. Um, but and he barely spoke to us when he was off. And then all of a sudden, he's with his friends. Chat, 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 happy, happy, happy. I mean, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. I mean, smiles and like, it really is amazing.
funny. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Okay, we
Welcome
are.
back to you and Mazel Tov to you.
Thank you. It was well deserved. My daughter's bat mitzvah, if you guys don't know the story, was October 8th of last year.
Oh,
So everything was obviously canceled. And she gave all the food and everything that had been delivered because it had already been prepared before, Simchat Torah to the soldiers and to different families who had been called up. And so she did a lot of, great stuff on her actual bat mitzvah. And then a year later, she also, we didn't want to do anything too close to the date. So we felt like, we asked her what she wanted to do. And I thought like a party, we'll just do the party we had planned. And she's like, I just want to get out. I just want to go away for and spend time with the family, away from everything. And I want to go to Greece. So we found Cyprus close enough. And we went to Cyprus for 4 days for a long weekend from Thursday to Sunday. And she brought 2 friends. And unfortunately, my son, who's in the army, couldn't come, but it was a really amazing. Thank God, just what she wanted. And we had got an amazing house, and our first time traveling not to America to see family, internationally just for fun to Europe or something like that. So that was really fun for them. And really, they were, since it's a Bitachon class, I'll just share with you guys how many Bitachon stories we had on this one trip. Was crazy. First thing, we get there and we're surrounded by 2 other Israeli families, and both sides, we have this house, villa. One side is an Israeli family, one side an Israeli family. One of them is leaving. They're from Ramat Beit Shemesh and they're leaving. And they say to my kids, because I'm at the grocery store, do you guys need anything? We're leaving. We have all this extra food and stuff. Let us give it to you, because we're about to go to the airport. And so my daughter says to me, after only Israelis go into strangers' house and take all their food and belongings, only Israelis clean out their fridge of all their leftover fruit and vegetables and milk and condiments and bread and snacks and all of the inflatable pool toys and beach gear and sand toys, and everything came with them. I think my daughter's at the grocery store. She's like, we don't need very much. They just gave us all their stuff. You can just pick up a few things and come back. And that was just really amazing. And the other one on the other side was there, and they're telling us what to be careful of and what to do and what they've done and which activities. And they came over and borrowed Kiddush grape juice from us. And so it was just a hug from far away, from close by. So it was really special. It was really special.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
well deserved.
So let's go into page 169. We're still, and I think one of the hardest things, this being clean, and I think we all agree that just keeping our side of the street clean is constant effort. But we're calming ourselves down that we're in Elul, and because we have Bitachon first, God loves us messy. God gave us these challenges. He put all the garbage on our side of the street in order for us to clean it. Through the cleaning process comes character refinement. We're not meant to have this all figured out already. So we need to keep taking it down a notch, that self-criticism and shame for our mistakes and our messy side of the street. There's a great kids Israeli book about this kid whose parents want to take him to the park and okay, let's clean your room. So he cleans the room and he moves all the mess to the hallway. And the dad's like, can't leave all the mess in the hallway. So he moves all the mess to the staircase. It's how are we going to get out? So he moves all the mess to the basement. And then he's like, you can't leave this for your mom. So he moves all the mess to in front of their building. And he's like, this isn't respectful to everybody else who's here. And then finally it all makes it to the garbage can. Sometimes that is the work that we are doing together all the time. So we are on page 169. It is clear that Ramchal is referring to what we have called rage, and particularly a violent, uncontrollable discharge of ka'as. Uses the term as fury or wrath, and he says that this a person can be indiscriminately destructive. This is obviously not the ka'as of the involuntary feeling we call anger. The initial feeling per se does not destroy anything. One who feels anger when provoked is in no way similar to a wild beast. The Talmud is indeed specific in stating that someone who breaks things or tears garments in his fury is equivalent to an idolater, not someone who feels angry when provoked. What does that mean? Another person is removed from the type in that he is not easily provoked, but when his threshold is exceeded, he manifests intense ka'as. There's a less severe type who does not lose control over his cause, but does retain it, holds a grudge. This is less destructive than others, yet his harboring a grudge makes him a person of anger. There is even one less severe, and that is that someone who is not easily provoked, but when he does become angry, it is but momentary. And this is certainly praiseworthy because it's natural for a person to feel anger when provoked. And the Talmud praises the person who can keep his silence when involved in a strife and be master over his natural inclination. While having a high threshold for feeling anger is certainly advantageous, the loss of control when that threshold is exceeded is still very objectionable, because the furious behavior may still be very destructive. The Ramchal then describes two other varieties we have noted. One who restrains himself from the expression of rage, which is certainly an improvement in that there's no uncontrollable destructive behavior. However, since the person harbors a grudge, he must act out his hostile feelings in a more deliberate manner. The least serious stage of anger is when the initial reaction is transitory and is quickly dismissed. There are several ways in which one may be able to dismiss anger so that it does not escalate to either rage or resentment. Thank God we have a psychologist here to guide us. We may think that times that we have been angered or provoked others to later regret it and wish that it had never happened. When we may apologize for our actions, there are times when we do not have the opportunity to apologize, but wish the other person would understand how we feel. We should give the same consideration to someone who angers us. He may regret his actions even if he has not apologized. We might also realize that since taking revenge is explicitly forbidden by the Torah, just what will we get from harboring resentments? We cannot act out against the other person, and we will accomplish by bearing a grudge is letting the resentments fester within us, possibly causing depression, migraine headaches, high blood pressure. Does it make any sense to harm ourselves because we are angry at someone else? This is why Solomon says, "Kas rests in the bosom of the fool. It is the utmost folly to retain resentment." Another consideration that may help to display anger can be learned from the story of David, who fled his rebellious son Absalom. One of his enemies, Shimei, accosted David with venomous curses. Abishai, David's general, was about to kill Shimei when David restrained him. Perhaps he is simply a tool of God who told him to curse me. This is something to consider when one has been offended. Perhaps it was the divine intention for this to happen, and the offender was merely the agent for effecting God's will. We should then accept the unpleasantness and bear it in silence. So he talks about anger, and we all agree the behavior, the destructive behavior that comes from anger is not good. It's not good. Doesn't help us. Holding on to that nervous system anger, holding on to that rage in our body, that trauma in our body, not good for us. Migraine headaches, high blood pressure, all this stuff. What's really interesting is that for generations, there were obviously teachings on how to release this, whether it was through the korbanot, whether it was through work that they did in the temple, whether it was through rabbi to son, mother to daughter. At some point, we had some sort of knowledge on how to regulate the nervous system beyond what we give over today. Otherwise, this is not really, right, so functional. So I think it's really important that we understand if we experience this kind of rage and this kind of anger, that we recognize all of the different layers of healing that need to happen. Because when it's not healed, we are at the mercy of the Yetzer Hara. We are at the mercy of our most destructive self. And if you haven't felt this, you've witnessed the behavior in someone else, right? Where you witness them behave destructively and like a toddler with a tantrum, or an adult who just can't seem to control themselves, or you felt some version of this ourselves. So we're going to keep going. And we're going to hear about what was Hillel, whose Midah had this kind of self-regulation, like really down. We're on page 171. The ideal, however, was achieved by the great sage Hillel, who was beyond being provoked into even the initial feeling of anger. This is Nikias in regard to anger. Kaas is even prohibited when it appears to be directed toward a mitzvah, as when a teacher disciplines a student or a father disciplines a child. This should not be understood to mean that one should not exert discipline, but rather that we should do so without kaas. And if necessary, one may act as though one was angry, but there should really be no ka'as in our heart. The Ramchal has defined nikias as the being of the elimination of the source of improper behavior. So one of the most interesting teachings that I've done since the war started was this positive intelligence. And he calls that we all have saboteurs. Anybody's worked with me, I've like done some of this teaching. And the number one saboteur we all have is the judge. If we judge something to be dangerous, harmful, and that can mean in many ways, harmful to us, harmful to our ego, harmful to how others will see us, harmful to what other people think of us, we will react. And depending on what learned coping mechanisms we have, he'll input perfectionism, he'll input avoidance, he'll input being critical, he'll input like being someone who holds such a high standard that it's impossible to meet, right? Or keeping ourselves to such a high standard, no one could possibly say anything to us. People pleasing. We have 7 different saboteurs. And when I read that, I was like, that's what the Yetzer Hara is. The Yetzer Hara is all of these learned sabotaging behaviors that we learn to try to survive instead of relying on Hashem. Instead of staying clean, we kind of gather all this mess on our side of the sidewalk and we think it's keeping us safe. Because the only way that I can understand that you would never feel ka'as, to eliminate the initial feeling of anger, means you've eliminated the initial judgment of the situation to be a threat. And I'm interested in any thoughts anybody else has about how you ever get to that feeling. And we're going to finish this paragraph, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Recently, we learned a great deal from the therapeutic technique of biofeedback. This treatment utilizes an electronic apparatus which registers the skin temperature and muscle tension. It indicates if a person is becoming more relaxed or less relaxed. By undergoing biofeedback treatment, a person can learn how to control physiological reactions that heretofore have been considered beyond voluntary control. One can learn to increase or decrease one's heart rates at will, to dilate, constrict the pupils, or even how to regulate one's brainwaves. Biofeedback has confirmed the Hasidic teaching that the mind can indeed exert great control over the body's emotional reactions, although this may require extensive training. Thus, although the natural response to provocation is feeling anger, it is possible to train oneself to not have this reaction. Furthermore, even traits that are natural and inherent within a person's physiology and hence not easily subject to removal by oneself can be removed by God. We pray, purify our hearts to serve you, and we ask God to eradicate our evil inclinations, even though the Yetzer Hara is a natural human component. We may thus ask of God to remove any initial response of feeling angry, and this is how Hillel may have achieved his equanimity. Of course, God may respond to this request by telling us that we must first do our homework and subdue our angry responses to the fullest extent possible. And only after we have made maximum effort to bring anger under control, may God then eliminate the natural feeling of anger. Okay, we're going to pause here. I'd love to hear what anybody has to say on like kind of these ideas of, with the amazing times of Mashiach coming and the amazing knowledge of psychology that the average person has today, or has access to, books, internet, neurofeedback, all of these things that we have access to that all prove that our oldest spiritual practices and teachings had access to this knowledge a long time ago, and then it was lost some point during the transmission. Have you guys ever felt anything where you felt more able to control or less able to control these kind of natural feelings that come up? Hi, Shulamit.
Hey, I'm dialing in from the Golan Heights. It's a little noisy out there, so I'm just gonna hop on.
You're back here. Yes, it's been noisy today. Our thoughts are with you up there. It's been a noisy few days. So we were just talking about the family and the ability now with biofeedback and different things or different modalities of healing that have come up, helping us to deal with anger and to either change our biological responses to feeling a threat, and just kind of these ideas, what you think about how how much progress we're making and being able to handle this.
So interestingly, because I have a new client who signed up with me this morning, and his first session, he brought up anger. And we have some amazing tools to deal with that, including the one that you mentioned. But from my perspective and the way that I've been trained to understand it as a somatic coach, is that anger is actually a valuable quality. And actually at the core of anger, underneath the depth underneath anger, sits love. Because why would you be angry unless you care deeply about something? So rather than pushing it to the side and saying, oh, I won't be angry, and then just like faking that you're all okay, it's actually quite important to presence the anger and to understand where it's coming from, come back to the core wound. So that's some of the work I do with inner child work and parts work, and all the work, the different things. But it's super interesting because often it dates back to an incident, when you go back into the body and notice where it's held in the body and go into theta state, then you can access the wound that it came from originally and go back and heal that wound so that the anger is not there anymore. But anger itself, I was just thinking about the midas of Hashem. Hashem, we see him getting angry in the Torah. So anger can't be a bad thing, but I think maybe to draw a line between anger and acting on the anger. So anger itself is an emotion. Emotions are neither bad nor good. Emotions are there to inform. They're sometimes there to protect. Sometimes they come to protect us, but in reality, it's an outmoded. We believe it's our subconscious, our younger subconscious believes it's protecting us, and actually it's doing us harm. So it's in presencing that and then really observing and noticing what's really going on, like looking under the hood, that we can then bring consciousness to behaviors that go with the anger. So violence is never a good thing. Acting on impulse isn't necessarily a good thing, although sometimes. Just acting from a more conscious place, but understanding that anger is actually not bad.
I love it.
Lately, I think there's been an enormous rising of anger in women about the way we've been treated historically. Some people call it sacred rage. It's something that we should be angry. Like, when Devorah went to battle, when Yehudi lopped off the head of the general. And, right now, we're seeing echoes of a chapter in history, which I remarkably associated with something so similar in the Tanakh. Do you know there was a story about Dinah and Shechem when they raped Shechem, the son of the king of Shechem, raped Dinah, and actually I don't think he intended to rape her even. It was just he was in love and infatuated and obsessed. It wasn't a violent act as such. It said he loved her, but even so, what happened was that the brothers got together and they circumcised the whole country. And I think we just did the same thing. Sorry, it shouldn't be funny, but it's echoes of that. Sometimes there's a place for anger. The Torah gives permission for it. So anyway, that's my take. I don't know who agrees with that and who doesn't. It's only my opinion. I'm not saying it as true.
I think that one of the best things about this group is that everybody brings something, and the best thing about our group here is that we can see Hashem's guidance, and that was the thing that you had, and you mentioned inner child work. I literally did some inner child work this morning, and something came up for me. I shared a little bit about it on my Instagram, and then I had something else happen today. And literally, it was like the same behavior I'd had a talk with my inner child about happened like in a very similar way today, even though I thought we'd come to some sort of agreement that she was on board with my adult self. She was in the moment.
No, mine is a very naughty
board.
inner child. She keeps popping up again. Even when I thought she was behaving, no.
She was not behaving. She threw a little bit of like, and it was interesting because I was really, and I wasn't angry though. I was really curious and I was sad that like it had happened, but like, and there was a little bit of shame in there, and I talked myself through it, but it's really interesting because on Shabbos, I did get angry about something, but thank God I had the tools to communicate, like you said, what I was angry about. Mm-hmm. And instead I had the most beautiful Shabbos because I had someone in my life who was able to validate and hear and make me feel heard in what what wound was coming up for me that I was feeling angry about. And I think that's what's really amazing about the times of Mashiach, is that we used to read this and just feel like, well, I'm never going to succeed in not being angry. But like you said here, he talks about biofeedback. He's talking about the psychologist, and the Ramchal talks about stopping the destructive behavior and being compassionate and empathetic to the person who made you angry or the circumstance that made you angry. And I think that's what we're learning to do, is to
yeah, right. When we always talked about writing this book together, so something that's coming up for me is all the different expressions of anger in the Torah. Vayichar af Hashem. There's chema, there's ka'as, there's the burning fire. So maybe there's a place for some of them, but maybe some is only for God, not for us. You know, so I'm very curious to explore
we
that.
can't be clean on our side of the street enough. Instead, they're for us to look into ourselves. And like he says here, to keep having, in the Shar Bitachon, he says, you know, don't take it out on your enemy. And what we're talking about here, obviously, in all of these situations, in communal things, we're not talking about national. Like, let's just be really clear here. This is talking about among friends and neighbors and family and people we are in positive relationship with. There's the right place to turn the other cheek, and then there's, you know, the wrong place, as we also saw in the Torah with Shaul. You know, like, when do you have mercy and when do you misplace mercy? Okay, we're going to continue, but with this thing. So now we're going to talk about the adverse consequences of rage. If one is wise, his wisdom leaves him. If he is a prophecy, his prophecy leaves him. And I think we all say that too, when we're under the control of the inner child, or responding to a perceived threat or any of these things, our wisdom very often can leave us. Like you said, we're acting impulsively, we're acting without thinking. Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz points out that this is the natural consequence of rage, not a punishment. Just as if one puts one hand in a fire, it's not a punishment that one gets burned. Hence, even if the rage was legitimate and justifiable, the consequences are the same. Just as the burn would occur even if one had a good reason for putting one's hand to the flame. And I think this is part of the hardest part of dealing with trauma, is that as much healing and good things come out of it, there's still like pain involved. There's still pain that you experience. That's the natural consequence of having any of these situations. Shulamit, sorry.
Yeah, no, there was just one last thing I wanted to add to that came up, and like, I just, you know, when you were talking about Mashiach and the inner child, so there is a pasuk that says that when Mashiach comes, the lion shall lie with a lamb, and a little child shall lead them. And I can't help thinking that this is exactly the work. The lion being, you know, all our, you know, primal instincts, and the lamb being, oh, okay, they've calmed down now. And the little child leading them is us presencing that little one that wanted to heal, to come back to the pure state. The neshama state is very childlike.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. The Rambam says that Moses was denied entrance to the land because of his rage when the Israelites showed their lack of faith in God at the waters of strife. Rabbi Israel of Salon stated that people who frequently are provoked to anger by items of relatively little importance, by which at that precise moment appear to be significant. If one observes an infant, one will note if someone takes a brightly covered wooden block away from him, he may become very angry and cry. Obviously, the deprivation of the block of wood is meaningless to the mature mind, but to the juvenile mind, it means a great deal. Exactly what we're talking about, the juvenile mind. So do we, as mature adults, sometimes perceive trivia as being of great importance, and we act accordingly with rage. And like we said, when we're reacting to that, it's the inner child reacting, generally not the mature thinking adult. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter points out that if a person were engaged in a major transaction where he stood to profit greatly, would he ignore an irritating trivia to which he might otherwise react? Why? Because he is preoccupied with something that is so important that it totally obscures the minor irritations. If a person considered every moment of life as precious, as an opportunity to do mitzvot, he too would not be moved by minor irritations, which will lose their significance in comparison with the great gain one has when observing the mitzvot. I think this is true when you're in your mature state. I think that very often we sabotage ourselves, even in very important and big situations that we really want, because we have unhealed work And I think that's the difference, right? There's the difference when you're mad and like your spouse and it's all about the toothbrush. And then that moment where you're like, oh, this isn't about the toothbrush, you know, but you know, if you guys were in the middle of maybe dealing, how many times have we seen like people lose it over nothing, but they're not responding to the situation. They're responding to some perceived slight to their ego or something else that they're experiencing in that moment. When the Hasidic master, the some ascetic, felt he was being provoked to anger, he would study the laws pertaining to the prohibition of idol worship. He reasoned that inasmuch as the Talmud equates rage with idolatry, he needed to shore up his knowledge of this grievous sin, let his anger progress to rage. Rabbi Simcha Zissel of Kelm reacted to the feelings of anger by setting aside a special garment and taking an oath that he would withhold reacting in anger until he first put on this garment. Thus, delaying tactic prevented the progression of anger to rage. Some misguided psychologists advocate discharging one's anger by shouting or punching things. This is utter nonsense and serves only to intensify the anger. Whereas it is true that unconscious repression of anger may cause psychological symptoms, it is not true that suppression or conscious self-restraint. The Hasidic master Sfat Emes was accompanied to the train station by many of his followers. Before boarding the train, he said to them, "Do you know why this single engine can pull so many heavy wagons? It is because it contains the steam within itself. The control of anger can be a powerful, constructive force." So now we're going to move on to envy. Anybody have any last words or thoughts on anger?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's the one who said that is nonsense. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's actually important to express your anger in a safe way. So I have sometimes had clients that they've just needed to scream, and I've said to them, like, take a pillow, scream into it. They've cried it out, and it's just so helpful. So I don't know, maybe that was just an opinion, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's an opinion. And I think, what do we say about Shivim Drachim the Torah? That each one of them is touching one piece of the elephant, right? And, you know, I've seen it, you know, I think it depends. Again, whether we're talking about nervous system regulation, or we're talking about trauma, or we're talking about impulsivity generally. You know, there's so many different streams of this, and that we can now have so much more of a nuanced conversation.
Yeah, I think
And I think
thinking has evolved as well around that. And there was a lot of primal therapy that went down like decades ago, and it's kind of evolved into something a little bit more sophisticated now. So it's not about like celebrities screaming in a corner, like becoming all narcissistic. So I get maybe that's the kind of he was talking. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I think there are, you know, people who do feel a lot of relief from punching a punching bag or whatever, and feel a release that way. And again, I think there's as many different therapies as there are people.
yeah, I mean, for different people, it could be running. It could just be running it out or singing it out. But I think it does need to come out.
And he says there's a difference between suppression and conscious self-restraint. Very different things. Okay, we're going to move on to envy. Envy, too, is the result of ignorance and foolish thinking. The envious person gains nothing. The person who he envies loses nothing. The only loser is the person who envies. As it is written, envy is the decay of the bones. Envy may eat away at a person so that he cannot enjoy what he does have. Some people feign an attitude of being happy for others, while internally they seethe with envy. Envy is particularly severe if one sees a competitor being successful. If people would truly believe that they received only what was predestined for them, there would be no envy in what others have. In the Ethics of the Fathers, we read, envy, desire, and the quest for acclaim draw a person out of this world. Our sages were prescient in psychosomatics, and over 2,000 years ago appreciated that a person could be destroyed by certain emotions, of which they placed envy at the top of the list. Ramchal was well aware of the particularly lethal nature of envy and how irrational an emotion it is. Just what is accomplished by envy? It does not result in acquiring the coveted item. Furthermore, the displeasure that someone else has and result of the person not being able to enjoy even what he does have. The totally irrational nature of envy became evident to me when I overheard someone remark about how a person who was critically ill, look at all the attention he's getting. How absurd it was to be envious of somebody who was gravely ill. Anybody have anything to say about envy? Go ahead.
Something that I heard recently, I don't remember how recently it is, but it does say that, you know, anger and envy rot the bones. It says that in Tehillim somewhere. So actually, scientifically, it does. Your bone density decreases when your anxiety increases. Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Yeah.
As if it wasn't hard enough to be anxious.
And why all of this goes back to Bitachon, right? Because anger goes back to Bitachon. When we work on our Bitachon, we heal all the inner wounds of which we're responding to with anger, and we give places for it to be productive, you know, and we give voice to the underlying needs. And then we decide what to act on or what not. Again, in an ideal world, very often we still get run around by these things, but the more that we increase our awareness and decrease our shame and increase our willingness to make efforts, right? It's crazy. The higher the shame is for experiencing things, the less our energy is to work on them. So we got to decrease the shame so we increase our willingness and ability to do this work. Because as we can see, this is the human experience. The sister of envy is desire, which can exhaust a person until the day he dies. A person does not die with half of his desire filled. Desire can be of two types: desire for money or a desire for acclaim. Desire for money can enslave a person forever. As Solomon says, one who loves money will never be satisfied with money. As voracious as physical appetites may be, there is at least a temporary point of satiation. One can only eat so much, and when a saturation point is reached, he stops. For greed and envy, there are no endpoints whatever, even momentary. As I recall as a child, my mother telling me the story of a poor man who was given a magic purse which contained a silver coin. Each time he took out a coin, it was magically replaced by another coin. After several days, he was found dead of starvation atop a huge mound of silver coins. This is hardly a fantasy, because we often observe money-hungry people driving themselves to a premature death because of their greed. The lust for wealth can be every bit as insatiable as the craving for drugs. And in both cases, many people have pursued their desire relentlessly, even when shown that this would cost them their very lives. In commenting on the verse in Proverbs, the greedy in spirit stirs up strife, but he who trusts in God will be abundantly satisfied. Rabbi Samson of Fullerhurst says, as for the cure, however, greed has only one remedy: faith in God. Only someone who thinks that his and his family's destiny is dependent entirely upon himself and his own abilities can become a victim of unlimited greediness. He believes that every new acquisition will afford him security against penury. And once he has finished providing for his own needs, he amasses for his children and his grandchildren into the infinite future. But whoever trusts in God, confident that it is only God's favor which ensures his future and the future of his family, is easily contented. He merely endeavors to fulfill his duty, even in his search for material possessions, and whatever God lets him find within the framework of divine commandments satisfies him. This is why the word satisfaction is in our prayers so much. Ashrei Haish, happy, satisfied, this deeply satisfied, contented happiness that doesn't come from the physical, doesn't come from how much we weigh or how we look or how many kids we have or how much money we have. It comes from this inner contentment. And it's really what everybody who's awakened wants, and anybody who's not stuck in one of these pursuits, right? And it's important for us to always, again, just be cleaning up our side of the street, because we all have, he said, dust, right? Like, I am not that amazing. I have dust on my side of the street. So like, you know, there's little bits and elements of all different things inside of our side of the street, in whatever level it is. Okay. Oh, just what is the ultimate child who is driving the world insane? He explained, I see a person totally absorbed in making money, and why I am asking why he does not devote more time to his spiritual pursuits. He tells me that while his own miracles are neither few, he has to work to provide for his child. When the child achieves maturity, he too immerses himself totally in making money. And when asked why he does not make more time for spiritual pursuits, his answer is the same. His own needs are meager, but he must work long hours to provide for his child. The pattern persists generation after generation. Everyone has enough for himself, but they are exhausting themselves for the child. Where in heaven's name is this child from whom everybody is sacrificing their spirituality? Can we not see this child as but a myth, a figment of one's imagination? I will tell you, this happens in everything. Have you ever bought something for someone else that you really wanted for yourself? Right? Like, or bought a snack for somebody else and you really ate it because it was really for you. Right? Brought a gift to someone else or planned a date for somebody else that was really something that you wanted to do.
I've done it so often that I end up buying 2 of them at least so that I get to keep one and give one. Maybe that's a human flaw.
I made a banana cake today. That was the thing that my inner child ended up eating too much of. And I made a healthy-ish banana cake. And then I was going to use coconut sugar if it was for me, but it was because it was for my husband. I used the real brown sugar and white sugar and the whole wheat flour and all the other healthy stuff. And then I ate the cake. And I was like, well, I guess you really did make it for you. You should just use the coconut sugar. So but in my head, I was really making it for him. But I wasn't. I was making.
Was it good? Sure, it was delicious.
Was amazing, and I very mindfully enjoyed every time I was like, "Don't you want to stop?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to stop. You're not even enjoying this cake." But really, in my mind, I made it for my husband. It was really self-delusional, which is how we know, I'm with everybody else on this, and yet there are times where. And there's an amazing story. They said, and it came to my mind the second it happened. I was like, oh, this was your Vegas. And it talks about the gambler that has to go to Vegas to mail a check to his bank. I had to go pay my gas bill, so I had to go to Vegas. I had to. That was the only place I possibly could pay this bill or gone to the bank, right? I was like, oh, yeah, you could have done any other of a million things. And not done that with Vegas. You just went to Vegas to mail that check. There was no reason for that to happen. And then to just be compassionate and gentle and move on and recognize the good things as well, but also to hold ourselves accountable, right? Oh, right. Did I just make an excuse and say, I'm doing this for my child. I'm doing this because I don't want to be a burden. I'm doing this because I don't, but really we're doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for ourselves. And once we acknowledge we do it for ourselves, then we have to make an accounting of is this what we want? When it's for somebody else, we get the selfless banner covers all sins. When you're starving, nobody can tell you you're not eating something appropriate, but you were starving. No one's going to say anything. I was starving. If you go I was starving or I was freezing and I had to steal that coat. You're going to be like, I'm so sorry you were freezing. If someone's really freezing, they're going to do whatever they need to survive. You're not going to judge. But if she was moderately cold and could have gone into the car and turned on the heat or could have walked in the house or walked in the classroom rather than taking her sister's sweater, that's a whole nother, area of accountability, right? And, we're using lighter examples of this. But of course, there's deeper examples and mistakes that people fall into as well. Okay. The sister of desire that can exhaust, the sister of envy is desire. We did that. Where do we leave off? The Ramchal is so right. Greed and envy are sister traits, like the sirens in the story of Ulysses. Treacherously, they lure a person to destruction. These traits must be extricated by Nikias. And now we have 3 authorities, the Ramchal, Rabbi Mendel of Rimanov, and Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, that tell us the only remedy is faith and bitachon in divine providence that God will fulfill our needs. And so every time we get to one of these traits, we're like, oh, that sounds really hard. How am I going to fix that? How am I going to work on that? I'm like, oh, thank God it's just bitachon. Bitachon is enjoyable and pleasurable to cultivate, and feeling that God is going to meet all of our needs and feeling that God's going to be there for us. Oh, okay. That I can work on, right? That I want to work on. So before we get too scared about what Nikias is going to demand from us, It demands something that we're working on right now. The desire for acclaim is even stronger than that of acquiring wealth. Even a person could subdue his lust for money or various pleasures. The desire to be honored may pressure him because it may be impossible to tolerate seeing oneself as lesser status than one's peers. I had this conversation with some other moms recently about the most valuable and hard work that they do, especially if we're talking about inner child work and nervous system work. All this stuff is being regulated in front of our children and being good parents. And there is no acclaim for that. Like, there is no one who is going to raise your status because you're an amazing parent, because really nobody knows what kind of parent the another person is. And the way our kids all turn out is not proof as to always what kind of parent we were. They have free choice and they're, you know, also influenced by many other things. But that is some of the most important work that we do. And there's no acclaim for it. And so I see in myself sometimes, and in also other women, where you did the laundry and you cooked and you cleaned, or you decorated the house, or you have a job, and it's so easy to go into your job and feel that sense of accomplishment because people are appreciating you and praising you. And at home, people take you for granted, how great you are and how much you do and what you do for them. And I think it is one of the greatest teachers of this Mida that we have to work on is appreciating ourselves, acknowledging ourselves, feel like imagine God like giving us a high five for the silent work that we do, because the point is not to just tell everybody all the time every good thing you're doing in order to get that outside, praise and accomplishment. Thoughts on this? Lala, Khani, you guys are much more experienced mothers than I am, with much varied experience. Any thoughts on this feeling of sometimes maybe wanting more acknowledgement, or what's the word he says? Feeling that you want to be honored, feeling if you feel some pressure sometimes to feel status in any way. Anybody? No pressure. Lala?
Well, I feel like I'm on the other side of it finally, as my youngest is 25 now. Like now, my kids gush with, things. But prior to that, not so much. I think it does come like I don't have grandchildren yet or anything, but I think like when people say, "Oh, this is the reason why you become a parent is for your grandchildren," because you're just oodles of love and stuff. But it does come back to you, because it is like when my daughter says to me, "Oh, I am so glad you were so much sterner than me, to me than other mothers and things." She's like, that just one sentence like that, and you're like good as gold for 10 years of door smashing and stomping feet and all of that. So it does come back. In the moment, it's exhausting, I think, but but it does for sure come back.
Thank you.
Worth the wait.
So I had a similar moment with my son,
Okay.
20, about to be 29.
Mm-hmm.
After 29 years, this floated in, this comment. But he said something about a business meeting that he had, and he goes, "Yeah, you'd be proud of me, Mom, because this is something that I learned from you." And I was like, "Huh? You did?"
Oh, nice.
And I was like, "Whoa, he remembered something." And I didn't even remember teaching. I mean, I said, "I don't remember." He said, No, you didn't teach it to me. I just saw you doing that." And I was like, "I was not aware of that, but thank you. That was nice." And I think actually one thing I will drop into the conversation is something that I learned, which I really threw me. I never knew this. Cheshbon HaNefesh, that all these people talk about Cheshbon HaNefesh. It's a trending thing now in yeshivas, that they never used to look at these things before. It was always about learning the Gemara pure, and now that it's all about the inner work. So Cheshbon HaNefesh, when I looked it up, because during COVID, I was like desperate to find mechanisms to soothe myself and to be less anxious. And I thought, how did the great rabbis of past do it? So when I looked up the original guy sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, not the guy, the original great rabbi who invented Cheshbon HaNefesh, the system that he used to do it was not what we think. So originally in the morning, he used to say, you have to write down first what you're proud of, what you did right. And like that, validating yourself before anything is actually, we forget to do that. We go straight into flagellation. That's not a Jewish thing, that's a Christian thing, self-flagellation. It's first acknowledging that we have what do you say? Chalek Eloka? Mimal, we have a lokut in us. Yeah, good. How did I show up well today? You know, and we so often, especially women, we forget, and nobody, we wait for someone to appreciate us, especially moms. We're gonna have a long wait, 29 years sometimes. So it's important we do that for ourselves, you know.
100%.
Hmm.
Connie?
Am I on mute or can you hear me?
No, we hear you.
You do hear me because
Yes. Nope, now I can't hear you. I heard you a second ago. Now I can't hear you. Now I hear you.
now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. All three of you have been saying is just amazing. My youngest are 22. I have 22-year-old twin boys. And thank God, I'm very thankful every day. Baruch Hashem, I have 3 grandchildren. And there was a time in the past, I always, and I still do, because I'm human, where I seek acknowledgement and all that. And thank God I do get it. Sometimes I don't get it, but that's fine. That's okay, because I am working on myself. The more I'm learning about, just being grateful and thankful and knowing that Hashem is in control, and I love myself, and I appreciate myself for doing the right thing. So I just keep doing it. Obviously, it does feel good. Yes, when I do get acknowledgement from my family members, that does keep me going. But if I don't get it, even though I would like it sometimes, it doesn't. I let it go. It doesn't bother me so much, because I know my inner. I know my worth. I don't need it from another person. I know. So it's something that I've been working on, and so it's something that I continue working on. As long as we live, we're always working on ourselves. So yeah, thank you everybody. This is just such an amazing class. And by the way, I do want to mention also about the Shulamit, you mentioned that anger it's important to get angry. I mean, it's okay to get angry as long as you don't act up on it. The same thing with envy. Envy is a bad thing, but if you're envious of someone who's doing something for God and learning, and it inspires you to do something good, that's okay, as long as you're not going to be envious of materialistic things that are not, that come and go and all that. But if you look up to someone else, and you see that they're working on themselves, and they're doing the right thing, and they're serving Hashem the right way, it's okay to be envious of that and say, I want to strive to be that way too.
100%. I think it says in the Pirkei Avot, Kinat Sofri Marbe Chachma. The envy between scholars increases wisdom. So that's something that's looked on as a good side of Kina. But I think actually, Lily, am I right in thinking that the beginning of Shar HaBitachon, something unusual comes? I'll have to look it up to see if I'm right after. It might be my mistake, but I think this is the take on it of the Rabbi Bachya. He says that we're actually allowed to want material things. If we feel that we have a certain tafkid in life, let's say I'm artistic and I love to paint and I love anything with colorful. If I surround myself with beautiful things, it makes me happy. I show up better. I become a better Evet Hashem when I have those things. It's okay to want what you want. It's nothing bad in it. It's not okay to want other people not to have that thing.
100%.
And that's the difference between envy and jealousy. And that's what he talks about as being destructive, that sitting and wanting what other people have doesn't take it away from them and doesn't give it to you.
Yeah.
It's noticing. I think there's a big difference between noticing, wow, that person has something, and that looks really valuable. I want it too, versus they don't deserve it, think they shouldn't have it, I should have it, why do they have it and I don't have it? All the negative, I think, self-talk, self-criticism, going back to, you know, these self-sabotaging, you know, archetypes that we have, you know, that are assessing and comparing between people, you know, which is, I think, kind of more what he's talking about. So let's see what he says here about this idea of looking for honor, looking for acknowledgement, because we all know it's something we all have. We all need a certain level of validation. How we go about filling that need is where the bitachon comes in, right? How are we going to go about filling the need? God gave us the need. Now we got to figure out how we go about filling it in a kosher way. Some people go through extensive training to achieve psychological acumen, and some people are simply endowed, probably from birth, with exquisite psychological sensitivity. On the other hand, some great Torah personages received their enormous psychological insights from the Torah, as is the case with Ramchal, whose knowledge of human nature is nothing less than astonishing. In modern vernacular, we would say there is no drive that is as intense and as long duration as the preservation of one's ego. We can see this drive in operation in young children. We can see it in full force at age 100, when all other lusts and pleasures have faded. Furthermore, if one reads Ramchal carefully, what he is saying is that the desire for the acquisition of wealth is strong enough in its own right. It is fueled and propelled even further by the ego factor, since having wealth has a social value that elevates one's ego. And even in the coaching world, I heard somebody say, you know, if you don't have like a big, scary money goal, then how can you say you really want to change a lot of lives? Like, money is how many lives you've changed. And that struck me as so insincere and not true. Like, you don't know how many lives changing one person's life for one day has, and a trickle effect on who knows how many lives. You can't say, well, if I earn this much money, that means I change this many lives, or that means it's a result of me really wanting to impact this many people. And I think that's where the secular manipulation kind of comes into this and skews our perspective. Oh, if someone has a lot of money, they must be really smart and really amazing at business and really this and really this and really this. But when you learn bitachon, you're like, actually, Hashem may have only given them certain tools because he wanted them to have the money. He put them in those situations because he wanted that to play out for them. And like, that's great for them, but that it doesn't mean that they have all the answers. Somebody could have gotten it through really good ways, and somebody could have gotten it through poor ways. And it says that the Shar Bitachon it's a test for everyone else watching on. Are you going to follow what someone else did, even if it's wrong to you, because they were successful, right? If someone steals, are you just going to be like, everyone's doing it? Like, and everyone's getting away with it. So is it okay for me to do it too? So there's this ego when it comes to what we have and how we go about it. And then there's this righteous person who's so successful and is doing it the right way and is doing it the authentic way. Are you going to follow him? What are you going to say your values are of who you're going to follow? Is it how much money they make? Is it how beautiful they are? These are all God-given gifts. That isn't something that the person earned necessarily. Okay. Even more than money, the need for kavod is insatiable. The kavod-hungry person is super sensitive, taking everything as a slight. He is easily offended, and what others may think is sign of esteem may actually be interpreted by him as derisive. Thus, if the committee arranging of the seating at a banquet tries to show their esteem by placing him at table number 1, the kavod seeker might take offense because he was not seated at the head table with all the dignitaries. When the Talmud cites envy, desire, and acclaim as 3 drives that can shorten a person's life, it describes a mutually reinforcing trilogy. The envious person always desires what others have. He's deeply offended if it appears to him that others are accorded more honor than he has received. It is amazing how we can have logical perception when observing others, yet totally lose it when it pertains to us. When seeing someone else exerting himself to be noticed to receive honor, we may see how utterly ridiculous such behavior is. yet we may be completely unaware when we behave similarly. We may think that others are applauding us when in truth they are laughing at how we've made fools of ourselves by manipulating our being honored. The desire to be applauded and praised like any other desire can bribe us, so we are blind to the truth. The solution to this is to make ourselves so unmoved by applause and praise that they have no effect on us. And that isn't talking about these moments of like getting positive appreciation from our children, right? This is talking about those awards that they give out at the dinners to try to get you to show up to raise money by the people you know who are going to show up because you were honored at the dinner, right? And the people who need to have their name, you know, over 8 million pieces, even at the cost of whatever the name of the building is supposed to be, versus the people who put their name on a building to inspire other people to give, right? There's a big difference. There's the ego, and then there's the greater good. And we all can have this in a million interactions in our children's schools, in different forums that we're in different groups that we're in dynamics in the family. These are things that we're going to experience on a pretty regular basis. The Hasidic master, Rabbi Shmelki of Nikolsburg, once arrived in a town where he was greeted by a huge crowd of his followers and admirers. Before meeting the throng, he asked for a few minutes of privacy and was given a small room. One of his followers was curious as to what the rabbi was doing in seclusion, and putting his ear to the door, he heard Rabbi Shmelki say, "Welcome, esteemed rabbi. It's such an honor to have you here. Shalom, our great leader. Your presence here is a blessing." And other such statements. Later, this follower admitted eavesdropping and asked the rabbi for an explanation. Rabbi Shmilka said, "I knew what my followers were going to say to me, and it's so easy for praise to go to one's head, giving rise to the abominable trait of vanity. Now, when you say such praises to yourself, they sound so stupid. There's no vanity whatsoever. I therefore said them to myself first, so I could realize how silly it all sounded. So then when my followers said the same thing, they didn't have the same impact on me." Okay, we are at the end of our hour, so we're going to continue. I know it's so hard to stop because it's so interesting. We're going to continue with vanity next week. And then we're going to go into a little bit more of a discussion about kavod. And that is what is going to finish up chapter 11. And then we're going to get into practical strategies to clean up our side of the street, instead of just understanding all the ways in which we are going to need to keep cleaning up our side of the street that we have been doing. And I look forward to seeing all of that with you guys next week. It will be happening for sure. Nothing's coming up next week at our regular time. And please feel free to share something in the WhatsApp group. And if you guys have any Bitachon stories, please feel free to share them. And I will end with one last thing. I need a new can opener. Okay, I needed a new can opener. And when I was in America, I bought albacore tuna, which if you live in Israel is impossible to get here. It's not a thing. And I love albacore tuna because I grew up in America. And so I bought 8 cans and schlepped it back in my suitcase to realize that I no longer own a can opener because all tuna in Israel has a pop top. All cans come with a pop top. And I really wanted a can opener. And I even put one in my Amazon cart. And I knew it was stressing out my husband because he hates when Amazon boxes come. And we have a lot of stuff going on, and we just went to Cyprus. And even though it was like a $7 can opener, I did not buy it for myself because I knew it would just being sensitive to my husband. I'll be like, the tuna will still be there. And then I was walking out of my friend's house, and outside her house on Shabbos was a box of American can openers. And after Shabbos, I texted her, "Why do you have an entire box of American can openers outside your house? May I have one? Take 2. So within 24 hours of me wanting one American can opener, God found a way to deliver to me 2 American can openers for free without Amazon having to arrive at my house and stress out my husband. So nothing is impossible. God has a million ways.
That's
to
amazing. Wow.
Provide
Cool story. I love it.
the simplest thing as a can opener to these very, very, very big things that we're all trying to have happen. And so I know Shulamit, you're in the north. Lala, you're in your heart is in the south right now. Connie, I know your heart is here and with people in your life who need healing. And so like a million things had to happen before my desire for the can opener even came to be, that box would be in front of my neighbor's house today, like yesterday. So let's remember that the Yeshuas are all on the way for all of us personally, on like the minuscule can opener level, on the big level. We don't have to solve everyone else's problems. God created the solution before he created the problem. And we're just going to breathe that in. And
That's an important piece of the puzzle. You know, you said that like you just dropped that there, and I was like, wow, you know, that's huge. Yes, we have to remember that. Thank you.
and in like really big things that maybe I'll share in the future that are like unfolding right now. It's like we've had this big problem going on for a long time, and now it's like been so slowly coming to fruition, like at a snail's pace. And this trip to America that I just had, literally, like Connie knows how many times, like I had no idea when I was coming. And literally it could not have been timed to the minute better on everybody's schedules. And I was there for Grandparents' Day. Like he knew from the beginning when was the best time for me to travel. All of my stress was self-created until the date was revealed to me as to when was the right time. And the same thing for this other thing that is happening. I'm just knowing it and feeling it is the work of Bitachon that we are all doing while we're waiting. We're cleaning up our side of the street. So take that into our week. Get out your brooms. It's Elul, and look forward to having another class, one more class before Rosh Hashanah.
I have
Yay.
I have a Bitachon story. Can I
Oh,
share it?
Okay, for anybody
have
who
to
can
pop
stay
off,
for
so
those last
sorry.
minutes. So go.
Later, Lila.
I'll stay for your story.
I
Only
also
if-
gotta go. I'm sorry.
No, I want to
Maybe you
stay for
could-
the story. You go.
I can share it
But I
with
would
you.
love to hear it.
Well, it's
Okay.
fine if we record it. You can listen into it afterwards. But
Oh, okay, I guess.
last time I came for a month to Israel to sort of scout out where I
Connie,
was
you
going.
can go. Don't worry. I'm actually going to pause the recording.
Okay, I'll watch the recording. Okay.
Oh, okay. So I'll leave it on the recording.
If you don't mind. Yeah, thank you.
I
Bye-bye.
can share it with your group another time. It's fine. I can just chat
No,
with you.
I want to hear. I'm here.
So when I came to Israel for a month, I had no idea where I was going to stay. None. And I just said, Hashem will work it out for me. And just at that moment, somebody on the kibbutz was renting not a normal like kibbutz style house, which is basic. When I say basic, when I've stayed here in the past, it's a mattress, which is about 1,000 years old, a sink and a bathroom, which is 1,000. Nothing has changed here since the 1930s. It's literally the same thing. And she was renting a house with a balcony, a beautifully fitted kitchen, with a view of, I mean, everything. And I hadn't also that I didn't have room in my case for all my things, so I didn't pack a tambourine, but I like to say like the shira with a tambourine. She had one hanging on her wall. It was just like every little thing that you could have imagined was there. And it was so beautiful. But when it came to the end of the rental, I was going home for a month, so I couldn't commit to renting it for the whole year. So she ended up giving it to someone else. And instead of getting into panic, I was like, I was really upset because I'd had meditated that this is the house that I want to be living in. It's beautiful, good energies. I just said, this or better, something else will come up. Anyway, it turns out her ex-husband is renting 2 houses down. It's a very similar house, and I've taken this for now. But when I came into it, the situation is they both left the kibbutz for obvious reasons. They've got little kids and they can't be in a war zone. And he sort of left it a bit flying. Like he didn't have a chance to take his stuff out of the cupboards. I, on the other hand, had come with all my cases of Aliyah and like my winter wardrobe and my summer wardrobe. And I opened the closet and all his stuff's falling out. The fridge has got all the food in it. I'm like, oh, I just didn't expect this. And I thought, well, can he get here? Can we get a cleaner maybe? But again, I just put it to one side. And then I had a manifestation session with, Pearl Lopian, who does the tapping. So she did a manifestation session the other night, and it was that night. And she said, just manifest whatever you want to manifest. And I was like, I want a beautiful home in Israel that's big enough for all my kids to come and clean and gorgeous. And no. And I was just like, la, 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 tapping away. The next morning, I got a text from my cousin. She said, look, I've got a friend she doesn't want to rent her house to just anyone. She's been away for quite a few months now, but it doesn't look like she's she's renting it at all, but she said, because I'm your cousin, she'd be happy to rent it to you. It just happens to be the nicest house on the kibbutz. It's just been, her husband is a Kabbalah, it's got architecturally designed gardens and huge salon and like a deck that looks out over the view, and you can meditate on it. And it's pretty much, it's not much different than the price I'm paying for this little shack. And I'm like, what? So today I'm supposed to be moving into, I may not, because I think, look, even though it's a little bit more, and even I'm trying to save money now, so I may not, because I'm actually quite happy here, it's fine. But the idea that that can manifest like that so quickly just shows me that there's no lack. It's all in our mind, the illusion. You know, there's abundance, there's always enough, there's always another thing. Hashem can always provide the solution. And I loved what you said, that the solution was there already. It was, I just didn't know about it.
Right. Crazy. Thank you so much for sharing it. And now we'll have to get together while you're here. Really just, it's been a crazy few days up there. So, you know, giving a big hug.
Yeah, back
Your
at
work
you.
is, I'm sure, very needed here.
Thank you. Same, like, you know, yours also, including for me. So thank you. This is of huge benefit to me. Even though I can't always come on, I always try and listen to them afterwards. Let's be
You had always a lot of great insight. You always contribute amazing when you're here.
Thank you so much. Of course, so whatever, like, you know, it's just your inspiring sharing, always feedback off each other. Oh, here's one thing that you'll like. I heard an analogy that's really up your street the other day. She said, if it was my coach, she said to me, if you were starving hungry and somebody knocked at your door and he says, here's some pizza, and it's like really bad pizza, you just fall on it and eat it, right? But if you had nourished yourself and you were like always like, know that your larder is stocked with healthy food, and you're always like, you eat the best and the finest foods, and somebody knocked on your door with junk pizza, you'd never fall on that. So she says it's the same with your spiritual nourishment. If you're filling your own cup and you know yourself, you honor yourself, you're worthy, you don't fall for all this flattery and kavod seeking and jealousy and stuff like that, because you're full of nutrients. So I thought that would float your boat.
Very much. I
Yeah.
loved it. I loved it. Okay, back to life, and have a really good afternoon and evening.
Yeah, you too. We'll speak soon, my darling.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.